Texas looks tamed, fenced, paved, mapped down to the fence post. It is not. 6 animals share this state with you right now. Every one of them heavier than a grown adult, and most of them you will never see. We are not ranking them by teeth. We are ranking them by how far out of sight they have slipped, and how far some of them walk to come back. Number 1 was declared gone from Texas before your parents were born, and nobody carried it home. It walked across a border and a desert in the dark. Number 6, the feral hog. There are more than 2.5 million feral hogs in Texas. It is the largest population of them in the country, and they have pushed into 253 of the state's 254 counties. They move in family groups the hunters call sounders. They turn a field into churned mud overnight, and they breed faster than almost anything else on 4 legs. A sow ready to have young before she is a year old, and dropping 2 litters in a good one. They live right in the white-tailed deer woods, in the river bottoms behind the towns, and because Texas has hunted them relentlessly, they have learned to do most of their moving after dark. Most of the ones you would ever meet run 100 to 250 pounds. But the boars keep going. 300, 400. And the biggest one ever pulled out of Texas, a hog the trappers who caught him called Borzilla, came in close to 800 pounds, taken near De Leon in Comanche County on the 16th of January 2015. That is heavier than a grizzly. That is a wild pig with tusks, night vision built into its habits, and enough intelligence to study a trap and refuse to walk into it. They are not staying in the country either. A few years back, a trapping crew wrestled a 411-pound boar off a golf course in San Antonio, and the trapper said the thing out loud that most people would rather not hear. As the city grows, the land the animals lived on gets built over, and the animals get pushed and pushed until you are no longer meeting them out in the brush. You are meeting them where you live. Here is why you still do not fear it. The state has spent decades teaching you to see the hog as a nuisance, a line item, a thing that costs Texas as much as $500 million a year in ruined crops and torn up pasture, a thing to trap, shoot, and forget. A pest is a thing you stop looking at. That is the danger. Because in November of 2019, a 59-year-old caregiver named Christine Rollins arrived for work before dawn at a home in Anahuac, east of Houston, and never made it from her car to the front door. A group of feral hogs killed her in the driveway. The elderly woman she cared for is the one who found her. The medical examiner ruled the cause plainly. The sheriff, 35 years on the job, called it one of the worst things he had ever seen. And then he said the other half of it. Fewer than 6 deaths like it have ever been recorded in the entire country. Researchers put the odds of a fatal hog attack at less than 1 in a million. The neighbors had complained about the hogs for a while. They saw them as a nuisance. Nobody in Anahuac saw them as a thing that could kill. That is the whole shape of number 6. The thing that makes the hog invisible and the thing that makes it deadly are the same fact. You quit watching it. It never quit being a wild animal. This is the one Texas sees every single day and has trained itself never to actually look at. Number 5, the American alligator. Roughly 120 counties in East Texas hold them, a range that runs from the Red River country down toward the Gulf. Bayous and reservoirs, cattle tanks and golf course ponds, the drainage ditch along a farm-to-market road after a wet spring. They hatch out at 8 or 9 inches long, and the males never really stop growing, adding length and weight across decades until the old ones are pushing 11 to 15 feet. In October of 2016, wildlife officers pulled a gator out of Lake Champion at the Trinity River National Wildlife Refuge that measured 13 feet 8 inches and weighed 900 pounds, the largest ever caught alive in Texas history. It had been getting, in the refuge's own careful wording, a little too friendly. They roped it, hauled it out, and trucked it to a place called Gator Country down in Beaumont. The heaviest one ever certified in the state was killed near Choke Canyon in May of 2013 by an 18-year-old who had won a 5-day permit in a state drawing and baited a line with raw chicken. 800 pounds, 14 feet 3 inches. Biologists put its age somewhere between 30 and 50 years, which means that animal was older than a lot of the people living around the water it ruled. An alligator is an ambush that has learned patience. It can lie just under the surface, only its eyes above the waterline, for the better part of an hour and then close the last few feet faster than you can pull your hand back. Its bite is among the strongest ever measured on any animal alive. Here is why you do not fear it. Geography. In your head, the alligator belongs to Florida, to Louisiana, to some other wetter state. A swamp tour animal that lives where you take a vacation and not where you take the kids to fish. So the still brown water of an East Texas pond reads to you as empty. And as the suburbs keep pushing out into the wetlands, that water is now the retention pond behind the new subdivision, the pond where the dog goes down to drink. The water that looks like it holds nothing is the water that hides the most. If a wild antelope living 100 years in Texas is news to you, that is the whole reason this channel exists. Subscribing is how the next one of these reaches you when it drops. No searching required. And I want to hear it in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from and whether any of these 6 has ever turned up on your land. Because number 4 is a wild Asian antelope, and it has been loose in South Texas for 100 years. The Nilgai, native to India and Pakistan, where it is the largest antelope on the whole continent. A mature bull stands shoulder high to a man and weighs 600 pounds, some of them past 800, with a dark gunmetal blue coat that has earned them the name Blue Bull. Back in the 1920s, a man named Caesar Kleberg, running the King Ranch, was deep in a long project to restock his range with wildlife. And in 1929 and 30, he turned 12 Nilgai loose on the ranch's Narias division down in Kennedy County. The King Ranch is not a pasture. It is 825,000 acres of coastal prairie, white sand, and live oak, and to a scrubland antelope from the far side of the world, it was paradise. The cows dropped twins year after year, and the herd did not stay put. It spread to the neighboring ranches on its own 4 feet. 100 years on, there are an estimated 30,000 Nilgai out there, and some counts run higher, ranging free from the outskirts of Corpus Christi south to the Rio Grande. They run 30 miles an hour and can outrun a horse over rough ground. Their hide is nearly an inch thick across the neck and chest, thick enough to seal its own wounds, which is why hunters call the Nilgai one of the hardest animals in Texas to bring down. A shot one often leaves almost no blood to follow. When biologists finally wanted to understand how far they wander, they had to fit them with radio collars and chase the signal. Here is why you do not see it. There is no slot in your map for it. Your mental list of Texas wildlife has deer and coyotes and hogs on it, and it does not have a 600-pound blue antelope from India. So when your eye lands on one, it slides right off and files it as somebody's escaped livestock, a fence line oddity, a shimmer in the heat, a thing with no place in your picture of a place, goes invisible inside it. Officially, the state calls the Nilgai a species of least concern, an animal that mostly minds its own business, and that quiet official shrug is part of the camouflage. It has been out there, wild and breeding, for 100 years, with herds of them turning up well north of where they started, and most Texans have never so much as heard its name. Everything down to here has been hiding in the low country, in water and brush you could walk right past. From here up, the list climbs into the mountains, and the animals get bigger, stranger, and far harder to live beside. Number 3, the Aoudad, the Barbary sheep native to the mountains of North Africa. A ram runs close to 300 pounds with heavy curling horns and a mane that hangs off its chest down to the knees, an animal engineered for vertical rock. In 1957, Texas Parks and Wildlife released 31 of them near Claude, up in the Panhandle, and more the next year, as a new animal for hunters to chase. They took to the broken cliffs of the Transpecos, as if it were the Atlas Mountains they came from. They can make their own water from the food they eat and go long stretches without drinking, which lets them hold ground where almost nothing else survives. So they thrived, and then they multiplied, one estimate putting their increase at 1,800% since the early 1960s. Today there are more than 20,000 of them, by some counts closer to 30,000, spread across West Texas, up through Palo Duro and the Caprock, and onto the edge of the hill country. The ewes drop twins, and they do it twice a year. Here's why you do not see it, and it comes in 2 layers. The first is plain. An Aoudad the color of the rock, standing dead still on a cliff face in country your eye has already written off as empty stone, is almost impossible to pick out. The second layer is the one nobody wants to hear. The Aoudad is winning. It carries a pneumonia bacterium, Mycoplasma ovip pneumonia, that it can spread without showing symptoms, and it out-eats and outbreeds the native desert bighorn sheep that Texas has spent decades and fortunes trying to bring back. In 2025, surveys counted about 730 wild desert bighorns in the entire state, against tens of thousands of Aoudad. It has gotten bad enough that in Big Bend National Park, crews now go up in helicopters alongside state officials and shoot invasive Aoudad off the Dead Horse Mountains just to give the park's last bighorns room to breathe. And here's the twist the desert plays on us. The Aoudad has become a prized trophy worth real money to hunt, so the same animal wildlife managers are trying to erase is, to somebody else, a small fortune on the hoof. The bighorn is native. The Aoudad is not, and out here quietly, the native is the one losing. 2 animals remain, and this is where Texas stops feeling like a place you have finished mapping. Number 2, the American bison. On the eastern rim of the Llano Estacado at Caprock Canyon State Park in the Panhandle lives the official Texas state bison herd. A bull weighs up to a ton and stands 6 feet at the shoulder. The largest land animal in North America, with a hump over the shoulders that is pure muscle. Once, herds of them were described as stretching 10 miles wide and 100 miles long, until commercial hunters arrived on the plains in the late 1800s and shot them off for the hide and the tongue, leaving the rest to rot. In 1878, in the middle of that slaughter, a rancher named Charles Goodnight and his wife Mary Ann pulled a handful of orphan calves out of it and kept them alive. Goodnight held that herd as a closed bloodline for more than a century on the J.A. Ranch, the oldest ranch in the Panhandle, over 1 million acres of it, and the animals grazing Caprock today are the direct descendants of those calves, the last genetically distinct remnant of the Southern Plains bison. In 1997, 32 of them were brought to the park, and biologists later ran a careful breeding project just to keep the little herd from collapsing on its own narrow genetics. Since 2011, they have roamed the park free, more than 300 of them now, drifting through the campgrounds and standing in the road. The superintendent has a line about it. "This is a restoration," he says, "not an exhibit." Here is why you do not fear it, and this is the idea underneath this entire list. The first reason is tense. You keep the bison in the past, behind museum glass on the back of an old nickel, a thing that already happened and finished happening, heritage instead of hazard. The second reason is deeper, and it is the one that actually hurts people. Your fear is built for teeth. You give a wide berth to the animals with the forward-facing eyes and the obvious weapons, and you relax around the big grass eaters that read to you as cattle. The National Park Service is blunt about where that gets people. At Yellowstone, bison injure more visitors every year than any other animal in the park, bears and wolves included. Between the years 2000 and 2015, that park logged 25 people hurt by bison, a lot of them while trying to get a photograph. A bison runs 35 miles an hour, 3 times as fast as you can, and it pivots the way nothing that size should be able to. Its tail goes up right before it charges, and most people never learn that in time. People walk right up to it because it looks safe. That is exactly how they end up in the air. We put the bison behind glass and in the past tense. At Caprock, and at the more than 100,000 acres of state park land that draw crowds every year, it is loose on the road right now, a ton of it, breathing. One animal is left. It is the only one on this list that Texas actually managed to erase, and it is the only one that came back entirely on its own. Number 1, the black bear. It is native here. Black bears once ranged across most of Texas. By the middle of the last century, unregulated hunting and cleared land had finished them. Extirpated, not one breeding bear left in the state. And for 2 full generations that was simply the truth, and everyone absorbed it as a plain fact of the place. Texas has no bears. In 1985, Mexico listed the black bear as endangered. Texas followed in 1987. And then, quietly, at the tail end of the 1980s, a hiker came out of the Chisos Mountains of Big Bend and told a ranger he was pretty sure he had just seen several black bears. He was told he had probably seen javelina, the pig-like animals common down there, because everyone knew there were no bears. He had not seen javelina. Nobody released them. Nobody trucked them in. They walked. They came north out of the Sierra del Carmen, the mountains of northern Mexico, across the Rio Grande and miles of open Chihuahuan desert on their own 4 feet, using Big Bend as a doorway and then a stronghold. Sometime in the 1990s, a lone female made that crossing, denned in the park, and raised the first bear cubs born in Texas in nearly 100 years. A big male runs past 300 pounds. Since that first return, they have pushed out from Big Bend into the Davis Mountains, down toward Del Rio, with sightings drifting east toward the hill country and reports turning up at the edges people swear cannot be right. In 2021 alone, there were more than 70 confirmed bear reports in Texas, most of them in Brewster County. Researchers at the Borderlands Research Institute in Alpine are now fitting these bears with tracking collars, trying to learn where they come from and how they move, and one of the carnivore biologists there describes them as the leading edge of a population spilling out of northern Mexico and testing new country. Beginning in 2024, the state funded a project just to try to estimate how many bears are using one wildlife management area near the border. And 1,000 miles the other way, in the piney woods of East Texas, biologists and a bear alliance are weighing whether to help the Louisiana black bear return to its old range there too. And here's the line that earns this animal the top of the list. Texas Parks and Wildlife will tell you there is no science-based estimate of how many bears are in the state right now. The animal we erased has come home so quietly that the agency responsible for counting it cannot say how many there are. Here's why you do not see it. Living memory. A whole generation grew up dead certain there were no bears in Texas, and certainty is the best camouflage there is. You do not go looking for a thing you know does not exist, so the evidence just piles up. Sighting after sighting, caller after caller, at the edge of a belief that refuses to move. These are large carnivores that do not particularly mind being near people, walking back into a state that stopped expecting them. The bear did not ask permission, and it did not wait to be invited. It just started walking, and it has not stopped. So here's what this list is really about. Not fear. Every one of these animals was already here, or found its own way here, and then settled into a Texas that had quietly decided to stop seeing it. The hog at the dark edge of the driveway. The gator holding still under the flat brown water while the pond looks like it holds nothing. The bison standing in the road at Caprock. And somewhere west of all of it, past the last fence, a black bear coming down out of the rocks the way its kind did before any of these roads had names. They were never gone the way we told ourselves they were. They never once agreed to stay out of the picture. The only thing that ever kept them invisible was us, deciding not to look, because looking would mean admitting that the ground under Texas is still wild, and still theirs, and still shared. They are out there tonight, all 6 of them, bigger than you, closer than you would like, not hiding, just waiting for the rest of us to notice. If you like this one, YouTube already has a pretty good guess about what you will want next. It is the video on your screen right now. Go ahead.